The lawyer stopped reading, looked at my parents, and said, "I think I need to read this part again." The room went completely silent. My parents had been smiling just seconds earlier, talking about family business, like the last 7 years had never happened. 7 years ago, my father told me I wasn't welcome in his house anymore. I left with one bag, took a 3-hour bus ride into the mountains, and knocked on my grandmother's door with nowhere else to go. She didn't ask questions. She just made tea and told me I could stay as long as I needed. She never once spoke badly about my parents. But sitting in that lawyer's office, listening to her will be in red, I realized something. My grandmother had seen everything. And the clause the lawyer had just read out loud proved it. Because what she left behind wasn't just money. It was a decision about who actually stayed when it mattered. And the moment my parents understood what that meant, the entire room changed.
Let me take you back, because none of this makes sense without the beginning. My grandmother, Nora, was the kind of woman who didn't explain herself. She didn't have to. She ran a small mountain lodge for nearly 4 decades, 12 rooms, a wraparound porch, a garden that somehow survived every harsh winter. People came from everywhere to stay. There, hikers, writers, couples who needed quiet. She welcomed all of them with the same calm energy. She was 71 when I showed up at her door with one bag and no plan. I was 19. I hadn't called ahead. I just came, because there was nowhere else to go. My parents were not cruel people. I want to be honest about that. They didn't yell. They didn't throw things. They were just certain about everything, about what my life should look like, what kind of work I should do, what kind of person I should become. When I started pulling away from that picture, slowly, then all at once, the conversations changed. They stopped feeling like disagreements and started feeling like verdicts. My father sat me down one evening and said something he probably thought was reasonable. He said if I was going to make choices like this, I couldn't make them under his roof, so I didn't. I packed what fit in a single bag, called no one, and took a 3-hour bus ride into the mountains. Grandma Nora was waiting at the terminal when I arrived. I don't know how she knew. I hadn't told her either. She looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You hungry?" That was it. No questions. No lecture. Just tea, a warm room, and space to breathe. I stayed with her for almost a year. I helped with the lodge. Cleaned rooms. Stacked firewood. Learned how she kept the garden alive through frost. She taught me things without making it feel like teaching. How to talk to guests without performing happiness. How to fix a leaking pipe with whatever you had on hand. How to sit with silence without filling it. She never once said anything bad about my parents. Not once. But she listened when I talked about them. Really listened. The kind where someone doesn't rush you toward a conclusion. When I finally left for the city, she walked me to the road and said, "Come back when you need to." I came back every few months. Sometimes for a week, sometimes just a weekend. The lodge always felt the same. Steady, quiet, like Nora herself. Then 8 months ago she got sick. It wasn't sudden. That's the hard part about losing someone slowly. You keep adjusting to the new version of them. Keep telling yourself they're still okay, right up until they aren't. She passed on a Tuesday morning in early spring. I was with her. My parents were not. I don't say that as an accusation. They didn't know her the way I did. They had made their peace with distance a long time ago. But I noticed, the way you notice an empty chair at a table that used to be full. The lodge was closed while the estate was being sorted. Her lawyer, a quiet man named Mr. Hensley, who had handled her affairs for 20 years, reached out to me 2 weeks after the funeral. He asked me to come in. He didn't mention anyone else would be there. I arrived early. The waiting room had 2 chairs, a small table with a plant that looked like it needed water, and a window facing the trees. I sat and watched the hillside and tried not to think too hard about what was coming. Then the door opened. My parents walked in together. My father spotted me first. His hair had gone mostly gray. He smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, controlled one. "Look who's here," he said. My mother nodded. "We thought you might come." I didn't answer. I watched them settle into the chairs across the room like they belonged there, like this was already part of a plan they had made on the drive over. My father leaned forward slightly and said, "That lodge is something special, you know. Real potential." My mother nodded along. With the right improvements, it could become something extraordinary. A real family business. She said family so easily, like the word hadn't been quietly revoked 7 years ago. On an ordinary evening when I was told I no longer fit inside it, I didn't respond to either of them. Mr. Hensley called us in a few minutes later. The office was small. 3 chairs facing his desk, a window behind him with a long view of the mountains. My parents sat with a kind of ease that told me they had talked through this already. Maybe many times, in the car, over dinner, building a version of this, meeting in their heads where everything went the way they expected. Mr. Hensley opened a folder. He started reading. Grandma Nora had left careful instructions. A donation to the local library. Money for the volunteer fire department 2 towns over. A sum for the woman at the bakery who had brought her bread every snowy. Mourning for 11 years. Small amounts to 2 women who had helped maintain the lodge during hard seasons. Each item was specific. Each one told a story about her life up here and the people she had quietly loved. I felt my throat tighten. Then Mr. Hensley turned a page. The primary asset, he said. The mountain lodge and surrounding land, valued at $1,900,000. My parents both leaned forward slightly. This property, he continued, is to be transferred entirely to her granddaughter. Silence. Then my father cleared his throat. Well, he said, recovering quickly. That makes sense. And from here, I think we can all work together. There is a final condition, Mr. Hensley said. The room went very still. He read slowly, carefully, the way you read something when the words matter. The lodge may not be transferred, sold or jointly owned with any individual who has previously severed their relationship with the primary heir. Furthermore, no such individual may hold decision-making authority over the property in any capacity. My mother made a sharp sound, not quite a word. My father said, "That's very specific." Yes, Mr. Hensley said. She was very clear when she drafted this. But what exactly does... My mother started. It means, he said quietly, that anyone who cut ties with the heir has no claim here. No partnership, no co-ownership, no involvement in decisions. The silence that followed was different from the ones before it. This one had weight. My father sat back slowly. The confidence didn't leave his face all at once. It sort of drained, the way color leaves something left in the sun too long. My mother was looking at the desk. Her lips pressed together in a way I recognized from childhood. It was the expression she wore when something wasn't going the way she had prepared for. She couldn't have meant, my father began. She meant exactly what she wrote, Mr. Hensley said. Not unkindly, just honestly, she worked with me on this clause specifically. She was very deliberate. My father looked at me then, and I understood, in that moment, what Grandma Nora had done. She hadn't just left me a lodge. She had left me a statement. I thought about all the times she had listened to me talk, about my parents, without saying a single critical word, the way she had let me find my own conclusions, the way she never pushed, never pressured, never tried to make me angry at them. And yet, quietly, privately, in her own paperwork, she had seen everything. She had seen what happened when I was 19 and had nowhere to go. She had seen who showed up. She had seen who didn't. And she had made sure that whatever came next, whatever value or opportunity or future grew from that lodge on the mountain, it would belong only to the person who had stayed. The meeting ended not long after. Outside, the mountain air was cold and clear. My parents stood near their car. My father looked toward the hillside, where the lodge sat somewhere through the trees, invisible from here but present. Well, he said finally, I suppose you have a lot to think about. I nodded, and then I walked to my car. Not fast, just steady. The road back up to the lodge curved through the trees, the same road Grandma Nora had driven me down 7 years ago, when she picked me up and didn't ask a single question. For the first time since the meeting started, the lodge didn't feel like a legal document or a number or a problem to be solved. It felt like a hand reaching forward through time. It felt like her. But what I didn't know yet was that my parents hadn't driven home. They had followed me up the mountain. And when I parked and stepped out and turned around, my father was already walking toward me across the gravel, his expression different. Now, stripped of the boardroom calm, he had worn inside the lawyer's office. He looked like a man who had something to say that he had been holding for a long time. There are things you don't know, he said. About why we did what we did. About what actually happened that night. My mother had stepped out of the car too. She was standing back near the door, watching me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It took me a moment to name it. It was something close to shame. "Please," she said quietly. "Just give us 10 minutes." The porch light of the lodge clicked on automatically as the sun dropped behind the ridge. I stood in the gravel drive of a place my grandmother had trusted to me, looking at two people I had spent 7 years learning to live without, and I had to decide what to do next. I didn't say yes right away. I didn't say anything. I just stood there in the gravel, listening to the wind move through the pine trees, watching my father's face in the fading light. He looked older out here than he had inside the lawyer's office. Smaller somehow, like the mountain made everything more honest. My mother was still standing near the car with her hands clasped in front of her. 10 minutes, she had said. I thought about all the 10 minutes I had spent alone over the past 7 years. The ones in small apartments, eating dinner by myself. The ones on holidays when I had learned to make peace with quiet. The ones right after Grandma Nora passed, sitting on her porch watching the trees and feeling the specific loneliness of losing the only person who had never made me feel like a problem to be solved. I looked at my father. 10 minutes, I said. Come inside. The lodge felt different with them in it. Not bad, just different. Like a room that has held one energy, for a long time suddenly adjusting to something new. I turned on the lights in the front sitting room, the one with the low wooden ceiling and the wide stone fireplace that Nora had kept stocked with kindling even through summer. I didn't offer tea. I sat in the chair closest to the window and waited. My parents sat together on the small sofa across from me. My father leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. My mother kept her hands folded in her lap. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my father said, "I handled it wrong." I looked at him. That night, the way I spoke to you, I handled it wrong. He said it plainly, without decoration. No qualifiers. No but at the end. I had spent years imagining this conversation, and I had always assumed there would be a but. There wasn't one. I was scared, he said. I didn't know how to say that, so I said it wrong. I said it like a rule instead of like a fear, and by the time I understood the difference, you were already gone. The room was quiet. Outside, the wind had picked up. I could hear it moving across the roof the way it always did up here. Not threatening. Just present. My mother spoke next. "We called your grandmother," she said. "A few days after you left. We wanted to know if you were safe. I hadn't known that. She told us you were fine. She said you were sleeping and eating and helping around the lodge." My mother's voice was careful, like she was carrying something fragile. "She also told us to give you time. She said you'd reach out when you were ready." "We waited," my father said. "For a long time," my mother added. I looked at the fireplace. "You could have called me," I said. "After a while, you knew where I was. We didn't think you wanted to hear from us," my father said. "And then it had been so long," my mother said quietly, "that calling felt impossible. Like the longer we waited, the bigger the call became, until it felt like something we couldn't do." I understood that feeling. I hated that I understood it, because I had felt it too. That slow calcification of silence. The way not calling becomes its own kind of statement, even when you don't mean it to. The way time turns a wound into a wall. "When did you find out about the lodge?" I asked. My parents exchanged a glance. "Mr. Hensley sent a notification to immediate family," my father said. "Standard procedure, apparently. We received a letter." "And you came," I said. "Yes, with a plan." My father didn't deny it. I thought, that maybe it could be a way back in. Something we could build together. I thought if we could work side by side on something real, maybe the years in between wouldn't matter as much. "You were going to use the lodge to fix what you broke," I said. He nodded slowly. "It sounds worse when you say it like that." "It sounds like what it was," I said. Not cruelly, just honestly. My mother looked up at me then. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was holding it together the way some people do, carefully. Deliberately, like emotion is something to be managed rather than felt. "She loved you so much," she said. "Your grandmother. The way she talked about you. The few times we spoke. It was different from how she talked about anything else. You were her person." Something cracked open in my chest at that. I pressed my hand flat against my knee and breathed. "She never told me she talked to you," I said. "We asked her not to," my mother said. "We didn't want to pressure you. We just needed to know you were okay." I thought about Nora, about all the mornings she made tea without explaining why. about the way she had never pushed me to forgive anyone or call anyone or do anything. I wasn't ready for. She had carried that quietly. For years, she had known the full picture. My side, their side, the distance between, and she had never used it to influence me in any direction. She had just let me grow. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because we don't want anything from you," my father said. "Not the lodge, not a business arrangement. That's not why we followed you up here." He paused. "I watched you walk out of that office today and I thought, there she goes again. Same walk, same straight line, same way she always moved when she had made up her mind." He almost smiled. "You walked exactly like her, you know. Like Nora." My throat tightened again. "We followed you because we didn't want to. Drive home knowing we'd sat in the same room as you and only talked about property," my mother said. "We didn't want that to be the whole story." I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was almost completely gone now. The tree line was dark against a fading blue sky. Somewhere below the ridge, a light was on in the bakery where the woman had brought Nora bread every snowy morning for 11 years. I thought about how Nora had included her in the will. I thought about the things she had included and the things she had made sure to exclude. I thought about what it means to know someone completely, not just their best moments, but their whole pattern, and love them anyway. "Protect them anyway. She knew you'd come today," I said quietly. Neither of my parents responded. "The clause. The condition in the will. She wasn't punishing you." I turned around to face them. "She was protecting me. In case I wasn't ready. In case you came in with a plan before I had a chance to decide what I wanted." My father nodded slowly. "She was giving you the choice," my mother said softly. "On your own terms." "Yes," I said. We sat with that for a while. The fire wasn't lit, but the room still felt warm. From the wood, maybe, or from the years of heat absorbed into the walls. Nora had always said old buildings hold memory. I had thought she meant it poetically. Sitting there, I wasn't so sure. "I don't know what I want," I said finally. "From you, from any of this, I need you to understand that I'm not standing here with open arms. I'm not there yet." "We know," my father said. "But I'm also not asking you to leave," I said, which is more than I could have said this morning. My mother exhaled slowly. Not relief exactly. More like the release of something she had been holding for a very long time. "That's enough," she said. "That's more than enough." They left an hour later. I stood on the porch and watched their headlights disappear down the mountain road, swallowed by the trees one curve, at a time until there was nothing left but darkness and the sound of the wind. I sat down on the porch steps. The same steps where Nora had sat every morning with her coffee, watching the light change on the ridge. The same steps where I had sat as a 19-year-old with nowhere to go, feeling the particular relief of being somewhere that didn't require me to be anything other than tired, and lost in present. I pulled my jacket tighter. In the days that followed, I began going through her things. Not quickly. There was no rush. The lodge was mine, fully. Legally, completely mine. And for the first time in my adult life, I had something that no one could reframe or reinterpret, or fold into their own plans. I found things I expected. Recipe cards in her handwriting. A ledger with 30 years of guest records. A box of photographs from before I was born. Nora young and laughing in places I didn't recognize. With people I would never know. And then, tucked inside a book on the shelf beside her bed, I found a letter. My name was on the envelope. Her handwriting was steady, even at the end. She wrote the way she spoke, plainly, without performance. She said she hoped I wasn't too surprised. She said she had watched me build something, real from almost nothing, and that this place had always felt like it, was waiting for me, even before she knew that was true. She said she didn't know what would happen with my parents. She said she hoped in time, something gentle might grow there, not what was lost, because you can't rebuild the past, but something honest and new. She said she trusted me to decide. She said she had always trusted me to decide, and at the very end, in a line that made me sit on the edge of her bed and press the letter against my chest and just breathe, she wrote, "You were never the problem, my love. You were always the point." I reopened the lodge 6 weeks later. I repainted the front sign myself, fixed the latch on the garden gate that had been sticking for 2 years, restocked the firewood, put fresh linens on every bed. The first guests were a couple who had stayed there years ago and heard it had reopened. They recognized some of the furniture. They said the place felt exactly the same. I took that as the highest compliment. My parents and I have spoken a few times since that evening on the mountain, carefully, slowly. Not with the ease of people who have resolved everything, but with the honesty of people who have decided to stop, pretending the distance isn't there and start, very carefully measuring it. My father asked once if he could visit the lodge sometime. I said maybe. Not yet, but maybe. He said that was fair. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had. There are mornings now when I sit on the porch with my coffee and watch the light move across the ridge, and I think about what it means to be chosen. Really chosen. Not because you fit someone's plan or fill a useful role, but because someone looked at you clearly, saw the whole complicated shape of you, and decided you were worth protecting. Nora did that. She did it quietly, without fanfare, in the way she did everything. Without asking for recognition, without making it a performance. She just made sure that when she was gone, I would know. And I do. I carry that every morning on this porch. I carry it when I unlock the front door and welcome strangers who need somewhere steady to land. I carry it in the garden and the firewood stack, and the guest book and the sticking latch I finally fixed. This lodge is mine, not because of a document, because I was always the one who stayed. By the time everything reached its end, the situation felt very different from the beginning. What once seemed uncertain had slowly transformed into understanding. No single moment explained everything. Instead, the meaning appeared gradually, piece by piece. Looking back, every small event carried more importance than it first seemed. The pauses, the decisions, and even the misunderstandings all played their part. Sometimes clarity doesn't arrive immediately. It grows quietly with time and reflection. In the end, what remained wasn't frustration or conflict. It was the awareness that every experience leaves a mark on how we move forward. Some lessons come from success. Others come from moments that challenge our expectations, but both shape the story in meaningful ways. And often, those quiet realizations become the most lasting part of the journey.